So today, my group will be presenting on chapter 11. The title of this chapter is Building Critical Thinking Skills. My group members are Akiel Thomas, Kesley Sutherland, Adeja Griffith, Ayana Glasgow, and myself, Anna Ram. So to begin with, we want to establish what critical thinking is. Within this presentation, we'll be going through what critical thinking is, why critical thinking is important, and how us as students or us as prospective teachers in two different perspectives critically think and why it is important within the classroom setting, inclusive of the PE setting. So let's establish what critical thinking is. Critical thinking is the analysis of facts to form any sort of judgment. So subjects move from simple to complex. They can be formed with various solutions. Options may include students to rationally think, it may include students to skeptically think, it may cause them to think of unbiased analysis while forming some sort of evaluation, all based on factual evidence. It is important that students learn how to critically think in the education setting and even in the PE setting. Let's think about it. In any sport that we play, or most sports that we play, aren't decisions supposed to be made quickly? Aren't decisions supposed to be made on spot? And most of the time, success in these sports or any physical activity depends on these decisions that needs to be critically thought through the entire process.
Hi, my name is Ayana Glasgow, and today I'm going to be talking to you about value for children. And when we're talking about value for children, we are talking about the critical thinking activities in physical education. So we are thinking about using movement to stimulate higher order thinking, about using movement to help students explore, to help students create solutions to movement problems. And we usually use the questioning and problem solving approach. The questioning and problem solving approach is self-explanatory. You ask questions or you give students a problem to solve, right? So when we're using this approach, teachers should ask questions that are productive, that are conducive to learning, and thought-provoking questions that is pertaining to the lesson at the moment. It's also important for teachers to observe. You want to observe your students' interactions, you want to observe how it is, or the effort or the concentration they put into the work at the moment. You want to make sure that they're working cooperatively in these type of lessons. What a teacher should not do is answer their own questions. You want to give students time to think about the problem and to come up with their own solution to the problem. You shouldn't, as a teacher, ask a question and then proceed to lecture the students or answer your own question. Also, it's important to note that if used correctly, this approach provides students with an intellectually challenging environment, an environment that forces them to think critically. If used correctly, this approach is very valuable because it educates the students holistically. And when I say holistically, I mean you're using movement, so that's the psychomotor domain. You're using critical thinking, so that's the cognitive domain. And because it is that they're working in a group, you also get the affective domain. So because it targets each of these domains, it's a holistic approach. And also it is important to note that if this approach isn't used correctly, students could become puzzled or confused. Also, it could lead to off-task behavior if it is the students is not engaged, if the students isn't like if it is the questions is too easy, or if the questions is too challenging, or if the questions isn't conducive to learning or productive It could cause the students to become easily distracted. And lastly, most importantly, this approach takes time to perfect, and it does not work with everyone. Thank you very much.
Hi, good day. I'm Kesley Sutherland, and today I am going to be speaking about convergent thinking. Convergent thinking is basically problem solving by the students to determine the best suited answer for a problem. So, let's take for instance, a teacher give a task in a class. The students now will gel together and come up with the best suited answer for the task. By doing this, the teacher will guide the students accordingly. Now, the teacher don't want the students to just come up with one possible answer, but with many answers, because you want the students now to be able to think outside the box. The teacher also wouldn't give the students the correct answer, because this is literally spoon feeding the students. You want the students to be thinking. So with that, the students now, by getting the correct answer from their group of answers that they have, will present it to the teacher. Now let's say that the students do not finish the task. The teacher now can ask the students, do you want more time to finish the task? And the teacher can allot more time for the students. Or let's say for instance the student is wrong. You don't tell the students, hey, you are wrong, this is not the correct answer. But you get within the students and talk to them. You ask the students, okay, could you define your answer more? Explain it to me. Right? From that, the students now might be able to see where they went wrong. Or your teacher can also ask, do you want to explain this in your own words? The teacher now will then work with the students, as I said before, guide them in coming up with the best suited answer for the problem.
Good morning. I'm here to talk to you about divergent problem solving. Now, divergent problem solving asks children to explore alternative and discover many different ways of solving problems. Now, you would ask a child, how much ways can you play with a ball? It can be any ball, right? And I am very sure that child will give you a multitude of different answers. From playing with a basketball to how play with a cricket ball, or to play with a football, right? Now, divergent problem solving asks children to think, right? There's no specific answer you're looking for. There's a multitude of different ways and responses you might get. So as I said, as it's saying in PowerPoint, it says you get an infinite number of responses and answers. It usually happens in a free-flowing and spontaneous manner. Now, you don't; those are things you can't really plan. Just gotta let it happen, right? So during a theoretical class, you will ask a child. For instance, we're dealing with cricket. Now, you will ask a child, how much ways can you score a run in cricket? Now, there are a lot of ways you can score a run in cricket, right? And you will get a multitude of answers. Multitude. There's no specific answer that you're looking for. All you're looking for, what you want is the child to be thinking all the time. Now, some of the benefits of divergent problem solving, it will help the child to create while they explore. It helps them to stay focused and helps them to stay or maintain interest in the particular sport, because that's what you want. You always want the child to be interested in what they're doing. So divergent problem solving is one way you can actually have their attention and keep their attention.
So moving right along, we're going to jump into effective questioning and problem solving. Now you might ask yourself, why do we ask questions? Questions are great ways to finding things out. Questions are great ways to finding solutions. Questions are great ways, especially for students, to have self-expression and for them to critically think. Teachers who challenge and motivate students to think about movement in creative and intellectual challenging ways, they have patience. Teachers need to have patience. It's one of our main characteristics that we need to have. We have different types of students within the classroom, which leads to another point, which is children's developmental level. Students develop at different rates and there are different types of learners. Knowledge of the content. It is vitally important that as any subject teacher, knowing your content and knowing what you are going to teach is critically important. And most importantly, giving back positive feedback to your students. Not always will you have right answers for all your questions. There may be times when you do have wrong answers to some of these questions. But it is important that as a teacher, that you know how to respond and how to get the right answers out of your students. So it is effective questioning and problem solving is something that we as prospective teachers need to develop within our students. And it starts with us. It starts with us leading, asking the right questions and guiding our students to give the correct responses, allowing them to critically think.
So before we get into should we use direct or indirect, we need to discuss what is direct and indirect. So the direct method is a common method in which the instructor stands in front of the class or group and lectures or advises. So this is the teacher-centered method of teaching, really. And this is more of a traditional method of teaching. While the indirect method is a method in which the instructor assumes a more passive role and guides the students' interaction. So this is the student-centered method of teaching, where students are taught to think actively rather than passively. So the characteristics of the direct and indirect method. So firstly, the teacher is the center of knowledge and is in charge of knowledge and learning. So the teacher holds all the information and is in charge of where this information is distributed towards. Secondly, students are usually passively receiving information or instruction. So students are receiving information solely for the purpose of receiving information rather than expanding their learning and thinking actively. Thirdly, the instructor's role is to be primary information giver and primary evaluator. Then students are viewed as empty vessels who passively receive knowledge from their teachers. And lastly, for direct, the teachers and professors act as the sole supplier of knowledge, and under the direct instruction model, teachers often utilize systematic scripted lesson plans. So this lesson has more structure compared to the indirect. So for indirect, there is a learning environment where mutual respect and a quest for knowledge guides behavior. So this involves a lot of creative learning and creative thinking, where the students are taught to be active problem solvers, to think creatively, and it usually involves a lot of cooperative learning. Secondly, students are allowed to share in decision making. So instead of the teacher making all decisions in the classroom, for example, rules, the students are involved in the process. And this makes the students kind of feel a sense of belonging within the classroom when they are involved in the decision making process. Thirdly, goal setting is promoted even for the child that is not naturally athletic, more so for PE, or who may not be interested in sports. So, like it said, even the child who isn't really interested in sport, they should feel a sense of interest for the topic in this method of teaching. Communication plays a big role in this type of teaching. So, instead of having a classroom where communication is at a minimum, this method is big on communication, where the teacher understands the students' needs and their interests, and understand that they are individuals and not all teaching styles are the same. And that teacher should understand that an individual has different needs and cater to those different needs of the child. Students are taught to think creatively. I got into that before. And lastly, it appeals to the interests of every individual, rather athletic or not.
So now, to wrap everything up, in conclusion, we discovered what it is to critically think and why it is important for students and the teachers to critically think. We discussed the value for the children as in putting our learners at the forefront of everything that we do. We discussed convergent problem solving, divergent problem solving, effective questioning, and problem solving. And we also discussed the direct and indirect approaches to teaching and decided when we should use the direct method or when we should use the indirect method. We thank you for your time and we hope that our presentation was informative and that you enjoyed it. Thank you.